Every empire eventually falls, but Tony Montana's didn't collapse because he lacked money, power, or enemies. It collapsed because the very traits that made him unstoppable also made his downfall inevitable. His story isn't just about drugs or violence, it's a case study in ambition, pride, and the cost of unlimited power. 10 ideas, 10 turning points, and one man who built an empire out of the exact traits that would eventually tear it down. By the end of this, you'll never watch Scarface the same way again. Chapter 1, The American Dream. Tony arrives in Miami with nothing but ambition. He's poor, unknown, and determined never to be powerless again. No money, no name, no country that wants him, just a refusal to stay small. This is Scarface's version of the American dream, not the polite version, the raw one. Tony believes America rewards anyone willing to work hard enough, or in his case, kill hard enough. He doesn't believe in luck, he believes in force. He refuses to accept the life society offers him, poor, invisible, replaceable. He rejects all of it. He doesn't want a job, he wants everything. He sees the entire hierarchy above him, bosses, cartels, cops, and instead of finding it intimidating, he finds it insulting. And that single decision, to want everything instead of enough, sets the entire trajectory of the story. Chapter 2, The Will to Power. Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche argued that people are driven by a desire to overcome limitations and impose their will on the world. Not happiness, not comfort, power. Tony embodies that instinct completely. Every obstacle becomes another challenge to dominate. Every rival becomes someone to replace. Every boss becomes someone beneath him. He doesn't climb the ladder, he removes it. His rise isn't driven by greed alone. Money is almost incidental to him. It's driven by an obsession with becoming impossible to control. Watch how he treats every single person above him in the film, not as superiors, as placeholders. Nietzsche also warned that this drive, left unchecked, has no finish line. There's no version of enough built into a will to power, only the next thing to conquer. Chapter 3, Hedonic Adaptation. But power has a strange effect. The apartment becomes a mansion. The mansion becomes ordinary. Millions become expected. Soon success no longer feels like success. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill, the tendency to adapt to every new level of achievement until it no longer satisfies. It's the same reason a raise stops feeling like a raise after a few months. Except Tony's version happens with an empire, not a paycheck. You'd expect a man with everything to finally slow down. He doesn't. Because for Tony, stillness isn't peace, it's danger. This is the cruel design of the hedonic treadmill. It doesn't punish failure. It punishes success by making success feel like nothing at all. Tony never stops running, even when there's nowhere left to run. Chapter 4, Business versus Emotion. Tony builds an empire. But unlike disciplined criminals, he never learns emotional control. Every insult demands revenge. Every disagreement becomes personal. Every challenge becomes war. A smarter operator absorbs an insult and waits. Tony can't wait. Waiting feels like losing to him. For him, every transaction is also a test of manhood. And the man who can't separate the two will eventually make a decision with his ego instead of his mind. This is where his empire begins to crack. Not from outside pressure, from the inside, one overreaction at a time. Chapter 5, Machiavelli. Niccolo Machiavelli argued that rulers sometimes need fear, but he also warned against becoming hated. Fear and hatred look similar from a distance. They are not the same thing. Fear can be strategic, controlled, used with precision. Hatred spreads, it compounds, eventually it organizes against you. Tony misunderstands this completely. He believes fear alone guarantees loyalty. Instead, he isolates himself. His enemies multiply, his allies disappear. One by one, the people who could have protected him decide it's safer to walk away. Power without strategy becomes fragile, and fragile things don't break slowly, they break all at once. Chapter 6, Moral Disengagement. As Tony rises, violence becomes routine. Each murder becomes easier than the last. Psychologist Albert Bandura described this as moral disengagement, the process of disconnecting actions from conscience. It's how ordinary people become capable of extraordinary cruelty, not all at once, one small justification at a time. Watch Tony's face through the film's escalating violence. Early on there's hesitation, a flicker of something human. By the later scenes, that flicker has gone completely. Tony no longer sees victims, only obstacles. The empire expands, his humanity shrinks, both at the exact same rate. Chapter 7, Hubris. Greek tragedy has one recurring lesson. Hubris destroys kings, not armies, not rivals. Hubris. Tony begins believing he cannot lose. He insults powerful allies. The most dangerous of them is a Bolivian cartel boss named Alejandro Sosa, a man Tony refuses to fully respect, right up until the moment that refusal becomes fatal. He ignores warnings. He mistakes confidence for invincibility, and there's almost no space between those two things once you cross the line. Ironically, the qualities that built his empire now prevent him from protecting it. The same aggression, the same fearlessness, now working against him instead of for him. By this point in the story, Tony isn't fighting his enemies anymore. He's fighting the version of himself that no longer knows how to stop. Chapter 8, the Gina Complex. There's one relationship in Tony's life that never fits the logic of business. His sister Gina. Tony doesn't treat her like family, he treats her like property. Every man she dates becomes a threat. Every night out becomes an interrogation. Every step she takes toward her own life feels, to him, like something being stolen from him. Sigmund Freud might recognize this pattern immediately. Freud argued that unresolved attachments don't just disappear, they redirect, often into possessiveness the person themselves doesn't fully understand. Tony can't be intimate with anyone he actually respects. The women around him are trophies, decorations, status symbols, but Gina occupies a different place entirely. The devotion looks like protection. It behaves like jealousy. When he finds her with his closest friend Manny, something in him breaks that has nothing to do with business. This isn't a rival being punished. This isn't strategy. This is the one moment in the entire film where Tony's control fully collapses. Freud believed repression doesn't erase desire, it distorts it until it resurfaces somewhere else in some other form. For Tony, it resurfaces as rage, at the exact moment his empire is already coming apart. The kill that finally isolates him completely isn't ordered by a cartel or forced by the police. It's his own psychology finally catching up with him. Chapter 9, Existential Freedom. Existential philosophers believe that people create themselves through their choices. Not fate, not circumstance, choice. Tony refuses to let society define him. He creates his own identity from nothing. But every choice carries responsibility. Freedom without limits eventually becomes self-destruction. Jean-Paul Sartre used a phrase for this. He said we're condemned to be free. Because once nothing outside you is dictating your choices, everything that goes wrong belongs entirely to you. Tony doesn't become trapped by fate. He becomes trapped by himself. One decision at a time until there's no way out left. Chapter 10, Nemesis. Greek tragedy doesn't just have heroes. It has a mechanism that finishes them off. The Greeks called her Nemesis, the goddess of retribution, whose entire purpose was to punish hubris once it went too far. In Scarface, that mechanism has a name too, Alejandro Sosa. Sosa isn't a random enemy who shows up at the end. He's the exact ally Tony humiliates back in Chapter 7. Earlier in the film, Tony refuses to carry out an assassination because children are in the car. On the surface, it looks like the one moment of conscience he has left. But to Sosa, it isn't conscience. It's insubordination. And in Sosa's world, insubordination from underneath him is exactly the kind of insult Machiavelli warned, turns fear into hatred. Tony didn't just make an enemy that day, he made himself expendable. From that point forward, Sosa isn't just an antagonist in the plot, he's the executioner Tony's own hubris hired. When the assault finally comes, hitmen storming the mansion, gunfire tearing through the halls he built with blood and ambition, it doesn't feel random, it feels engineered. And notice how Tony actually dies. Not hiding, not negotiating, not begging. He goes down fighting, alone, refusing surrender until the very last second. It's the most Tony Montana way a person could possibly die, which is exactly the point. He falls face down into the pool beneath his own mansion, underneath the globe statue that reads, "The world is yours," the same phrase that opened his entire journey. But here's the detail worth sitting with. Sosa's men pulled the triggers. Sosa gave the order. But Sosa was never really the cause. He was only ever the instrument. Every philosophy in this video already explained why this ending was coming, long before the bullets ever did. Tony Montana often said, "The world is yours." But Scarface argues something different. The world is only yours for as long as you can master yourself. Tony conquered cities, he conquered rivals, he conquered fear. but he never conquered his own ambition. He never conquered what he buried inside himself either. Tony was always his own final enemy, and in the end, that became the one enemy he could never defeat.